ESG, sustainability bonds, and teamwork. All this and more on today's episode of The Wave Strength.
Welcome to The Wave Strength, innovative pension solutions for a secure retirement. Presented by Pacific Life.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of The Wave Strength, where we discuss pension solutions for a secure retirement. I'm your host, Jim Breen, and with me today is Joe Krum, who is VP and Managing Director of the Institutional Capital Markets Group. Joe, thanks for being with us today. This is going to be a great conversation.
Pleasure to be here.
We're going to be speaking today in today's podcast about something called ESG, or Environment, Social, Governance. And it's an important topic. And Joe, we've talked a lot about this, an important topic, not just because you hear it a lot in the news these days, but important because it's something that to Pacific Life, as you have actually mentioned, it's been a part of Pacific Life's DNA for some time. So talk to me a little bit, Joe, about how your involvement with ESG has come about and what this framework that you've been working on is all about.
Sure, and we've talked about Pacific Life's relevance in this space probably since the company's creation, right? Because when you think about what we do, we sell life insurance and retirement products, which have an extraordinary social benefit in the larger community. But specific to the topic today, ESG and this almost ubiquitous term that you hear in financial markets, it's for Pacific Life, it's the power of our general account. Mm-hmm. It's how do we take the investments that we do and drive for social good, whether it's green bonds under that E banner, whether it's social bonds under the S banner, mm-hmm. or what is called a sustainability bond, which is kind of a blend between the two.
Okay.
As I mentioned, hot topic, ubiquitous topic in financial markets today, and an awful lot of investor dollars being earmarked for companies and for projects in this space. In our space in particular, the funding agreement market. Today, there is only one participant in the market, and that's MetLife, who mm-hmm. happens to be, not coincidentally, the largest player in our space. And my team identified early that there could be significant market advantage, both economic as well as reputational, for being that next mover in this space. And being a next mover really just entails packaging what we're doing as a company.
Exactly.
And making it eligible or qualify or positioned such that we could tell our story to that investor community.
And when you say packaging too, because, I say this a bit tongue in cheek because I've been working with you on this project and it's been a very exciting ride and a lot has happened in a short time, but you talk about packaging this. Walk
Yep.
our listeners through what you've had to do, frankly, in less than 8 weeks
Yep.
to get this off the ground.
Well, the pillars under ESG are pretty well defined and becoming more defined all the time in terms of what actually qualifies as a suitable investment in these categories.
Okay.
So really, as we look to qualify our program, it was inventorying what we do as a company today. What do we have in our general account? Mm-hmm. We know we have a significant number of investments. Which ones would really qualify today as being ESG? And as importantly, are those areas that we're continuing to commit dollars to going forward? Because investors, they're savvy. While there's value in what we've done in the past, there's more value, they believe, in terms of what we'll do tomorrow with dollars they may commit to us. So we partnered with JP Morgan, who's a recognized leader in the space, to come in and help us evaluate our investment portfolio, both on the fixed income side and on the commercial real estate side. Edwin Farrell leading from the fixed income side, Deanne Reed from the real estate side, to really take an inventory of what we had today. Do we have a critical mass of assets that we can use to build our program around? And the short answer is Yes, we do. And also in the same vein, we also have a continuing and growing commitment to continue to invest in similar assets as we go forward. So that being established, the gating item, the ticket to entry, is really creating a framework, a sustainable framework that we could use to govern our program, to define our program, to advertise our program to that investor community. And the elements to a framework are pretty well established, but one of the requirements is our program needs to be reviewed, audited, if you will, by a third party on that yes, the story that Pacific Life is telling is credible, it's meaningful, it's impactful, and it's consistent with the standards that are emerging globally to qualify in this regard. And the company that we partnered with, and it's a thought leader in this space, Sustainalytics, that's what they were engaged and tasked with doing. So again, we inventory our assets, we build a framework telling our story, what we're investing in today, what we intend to invest in tomorrow. Critically, how we're going to manage and assure investors that we are delivering what we promised in terms of the oversight that we're providing internally and the subsequent reporting detailing where their dollars have been earmarked internally, and that happens on an annual basis. And to put all those pieces together, as I said, get them signed off by our second party opinion provider, and then actually go out and tell our story to the market.
Joe, you've mentioned story, telling our story. Why don't you share with our listeners, and maybe those that may not be familiar with Pacific Life's now over 150-year history, and the fact that in that history, Pacific Life has for some time maintained focus on these subjects. It may not have been called ESG, right? But it is definitely something that's been, as you have said, in the DNA of the company. So walk our listeners through that story a little bit.
The story, I mean, even to new employees, I think is obvious. That if you look at the good that is accomplished through the Pacific Life Foundation and the dollars that they deploy, I believe.
And the Pacific Life Foundation, those that may not be familiar with it,
is the charitable foundation associated with Pacific Life that makes investments in our communities, whether it's in Southern California or in Nebraska primarily. I believe in 2020 they donated over $7.5 million to local causes and within the community, including over $2 million of targeted COVID relief. So there's the Pacific Life Foundation. There's also the Pacific Life Good Guys. It's the way our employees are actually volunteering to make a direct contribution in their community, supported by Pacific Life. But the real value, if you will, especially from the market's perspective, is the investments that we can make through our general account, which I referenced earlier. And we have a long history of investing in what people would think of as green projects, whether it's solar energy, whether it's wind energy, whether it's hydropower, as well as under that social banner with particularly in affordable housing. And really, we're only looking for the purpose of our framework at recent investments. Again, that's what the investors are interested in. Investments that go back 2 years, and then perhaps more importantly, what we're going to be investing in going forward.
And so how will this framework set you up for success into the future?
Well, I mean, we believe that the framework and being able to credibly go to market and offer a sustainable bond will open up a significant new pool of investors for us. People that normally wouldn't look to Pacific Life, maybe that wouldn't normally participate in a funding agreement-backed note program, but who have a significant interest in ESG and ESG investing. And that's part of the oxygen my team breathes as we look to grow our platform is reaching new investors, both in the US and internationally. So very important. It also provides, we believe, an opportunity to have an economic benefit. Given the level of interest in ESG at this moment, similar bonds and debt offerings that we're seeing in the market have a price advantage because of that level of interest in the dollars chasing these investments. And when you're talking, for my platform, we're a spread lending platform. Every basis point matters. Mm-hmm. And if we can save a basis point 2, 3, 4, 5 in a debt offering, that really drives our success as a program, as a division, as a company.
And, you mentioned your team a moment ago, a new team, right? Barely a year and a half old, and
barely a year old.
Barely a year old, excuse me. And you've had a lot of success in that short time. Share with our listeners maybe some of the successes your team has been able to have in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I would say we really started this time last year. Coincidentally, as everything around us was shutting down, we were just getting started. Yeah. We started from scratch. Didn't have a funding agreement program, mm-hmm. And we're able over the course of the last 12 months to both restart Pacific Life's funding agreement backed note program in a new vehicle, establish for the first time a funding agreement backed commercial paper program, mm-hmm. and really to start tapping in and leveraging some of Pacific Life's relationship with the Federal Home Loan Bank, particularly in Topeka. On the notes program, we had 3 benchmark issuances in the market starting last June, and to date have raised over $1.9 billion in the funding agreement backed note market. We have raised over almost $1.5 billion in commercial paper and commercial paper markets, a program that we, as I mentioned, did not have previously. So it's been a running start, and we've been well received in the market. We like the momentum that we have. And we believe that with initiatives such as our commitment to ESG, that pace will only accelerate as we move through this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Joe, that's a pretty impressive 12 months. Obviously, hats off to you and your team. Yep. A lot has been accomplished. Thank you for sitting down with me today to speak to our listeners about these interesting happenings going on with your team. And for those who are interested in learning more about what Joe is doing with this bond, you can go to pacificlife.com on our investor relations page and learn more about ESG and see some of the marketing materials that we've created for you on that page.
You'll see the marketing materials and you'll see the framework that I talked about.
Exactly.
That'll be posted on the site as well. Exactly.
So, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, and we'd love to have you back.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
All right, have a good one.
This has been another episode of The Wave Strength, presented by Pacific Life. Don't forget to catch us on YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Although this podcast is presented by Pacific Life, the opinions and views expressed are those of the hosts and participants and do not necessarily reflect Pacific Life's views on any of the topics discussed. Pacific Life is a product provider. It is not a fiduciary and therefore does not give advice or make recommendations regarding insurance or investment products. Pacific Life, its affiliates, its distributors, and respective representatives do not provide any employer-sponsored qualified plan administrative services or impartial advice about investments, and do not act in a fiduciary capacity for any plan. Pacific Life refers to Pacific Life Insurance Company, Newport Beach, California, and its affiliates, including Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Insurance products are issued by Pacific Life Insurance Company in all states except New York, and in all states by Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Product availability and features may vary by state. Each insurance company is solely responsible for the financial obligations accruing under the products it issues. This podcast was recorded on March 18th, 2021.